Welcome to Intentionally Disturbing. I'm Dr. Leslie, and this week I have the honor of speaking to Dan Brunner. He is former FBI. He is pretty cool. I met him because I actually poached one of his articles about the online social media cult 764 that is really harming and manipulating our children. So we talk a lot about this, but we also talk about how to educate your children about being safe and being online. And we talk about Dan's career, where he caught a lot of criminals like MS-13 and where he's going now. He's actually starting a podcast, and I can't wait for you to hear about that as well. Oh, hey. You're here. Okay, Dan. Thank you for doing this.
My pleasure.
I'm really excited to talk to you. I was really excited to talk to you before, but I just got off the phone with the dad of a victim of 764, and now I'm emotional and excited to talk to you.
Yeah, it's tough.
It was a horrifying story.
Being a parent of young children that are coming up in the age, in the time, where they're going to start really exposing themselves to the internet. I'm in the position, with my background, having been with the FBI, I have a better position to really be aware, but I'm less than 1% of this country, of people. So obviously, we want to get to as many people and educate people through your platform and through my website and educate them and how to really be prepared and how to stay ahead of these guys, because they really are really just vultures and they're looking for the opening. So agreed. I'm glad you have me
Yeah,
on.
I mean, if it's okay with you, maybe I'll tell you kind of what this dad told me, and then we can kind of dive into what this 764 group is. And then we can jump into your career as a special agent and
I appreciate it. That's
MS-13
great.
and
Anything I can do to
all of
help.
these amazing stories you have.
Yep. No, I'd love
Okay.
to help.
So the way we met was you and I, Dan. I poached one of your articles and made a TikTok and Instagram video out of it because I thought it was an incredible article. It went viral. And then this dad stitched my article on TikTok and said, yeah, it's wonderful that Interpol took down this radicalized group, this extremist group, 764, but it pops back up. And even though the lead guy got taken down, he still got a bunch of people working under him. And in February of 2025, they finally convinced this man's daughter to kill herself on a live stream after she had done 5 live stream attempts before. So from age 13 to 16, she was groomed. And at 16, just a few months ago, she ended her life.
Yeah, no, it's horrible situation, and we'll dive into it deeper, and what the implications are for the family and parents and children. And I hope I never ever go through what he experienced. But I'm glad that he spoke to you, because it's important to get the message out there and to understand that with the power of the internet these days, there is no place that they cannot touch. Whether you live in Bozeman, Montana, or Wayne, New Jersey, or LA, California, someone has access to the internet. That means they have access to your child. So yeah, we'll be able to discuss that today.
Yeah, I'd love to walk through what can parents look for? So what this dad was able to see was that he was, so the little girl was originally playing on Roblox and was asked to help draw pictures and do little things on Roblox. Innocent, right? He thought it was another little girl. And that's what she started telling her parents, because
Right.
he was telling her to tell her parents. And it moved into, he started to extort her. He started to convince her to harm herself in order to fulfill this bucket list that they have, where you have to do all these things to hurt yourself in order to earn your place in the group. So now their kids are striving to be a part of these extremist groups. Then what happened was the parents were doxxed. Their
Right.
cell phones were doxxed, and they were sent child images. So once the child images were on the parents' phones, they were swatted. and police and FBI showed up to their homes to see that there were child images on their phones. Now it was all cleared up. The FBI is on their side. They've taken on the case. But now they are being harassed, and they are continuing to get random phone calls. The videos of their daughter are being sent to them continuously still.
Well, see, here's the thing is with 764, you understand this. Like, I dealt with Hispanic gangs, MS-13, Trinitarios, Tren de Aragua, cartels. That's what I did for the majority of my career. But I also worked domestic terrorism. I worked, investigating groups of white supremacy. And this type of crime is evolved. The fact of all of these other groups that I was investigating, they're, whether they were drug trafficking or human trafficking, as horrible as all of these are, it's a profit. It's a game for them to earn money, for them to grow their enterprise, for them to grow their organization. With 764, it's just pure evil. It's just pure manipulation and power to show that they have power over the child, that they can manipulate them using the internet and getting them into a position of power over the child. And then once they have that power, obviously they're continuing. And then for them, it's just the joy of, the evil. And that's why I look at these people as pure evil. These are people that, don't do anything for profit. They're doing it just because they can. And that's what makes them like truly evil, that they want to get, financially, they want to get money. No, that they're, maybe they may be extortion at the beginning, but at the end of the day is they want to get their victim to suffer. They want to get the family to suffer. That's where they get their joy from, is seeing the suffrage of all these families. And that's what makes it even worse and makes it even more horrible. And being able to, identify, these individuals and just giving your child unfettered access to the internet, giving them an iPad without you putting the security procedures. And all these companies that have, digital devices, iPad, Google, Android devices, they all have, tools for the parent to set up the structure of no, they can't chat. And I've been very, very, vehement, with my children to saying, I'm controlling, I am in charge of the iPad. I can see everything. I can see what you're searching, so that they know that, there's someone over them, that there's no secretive, there's no, secret chatting. They don't chat with online groups. They don't do that. I tell them that's not allowed. And I have various structured rules, which, I can discuss and how to really, protect your family later on. But these are the things that I work at, and making sure that my children are best protected based on my training and based on that. And I recognize that no matter how much I do, there's still going to be always a possibility of these individuals getting through my net, because they're one step ahead of us. But what I look at it is one of my things I do in my company is security consulting. And what I tell my clients is saying, listen, I'm never going to be able to say 100% you won't be attacked. You won't, won't get robbed. You won't go to, but what I'm going to do is create enough barriers between you and the bad guys, so they make it so difficult to get to the victim that they're going to go, oh no, this is too much work. Let's move on to the next target. They're looking for the child that doesn't have protection, that doesn't have the parents that are overseeing. I'm not saying micromanage your children. Sometimes that does have to be done. You micromanage and you're looking at them. But there are lots of tools on Apple and Android devices where you could set it up, certain age limits, and staying away from certain games. There's certain games, Roblox, and I just don't give them access to it. And so, it's a process of being a parent, and that's our job, because it's the people that.
So with Roblox though, like for me, like I've never played Roblox.
Right.
What's happening? How are these people getting to the kids through Roblox? And
I think they're building a relationship. Apps. They're building a relationship with the child. So in these rooms where you can look at it, it's not just Roblox. You can look at all these online platforms, PlayStation, and other video game and Xbox and computers, where there's rooms where you're sitting there with what you're building, and there's people talking to each other, and those voices can be manipulated. So your child who is 8, 9, 10, 11, 13 years old is sitting in this room and they're having fun. There's other people that come in and they strike up a conversation. They may be on other sides of the planet. They may be on the other side of the world. And to them, it sounds like another 13-year-old. So of course they're going to strike up a conversation. And then before you know it, these people know how to get them and manipulate them, their minds, to do what they say. Hey, I want you to, can we do this? Can we do this? And the most important part is, and I've taught my children, and I said that to them plainly from the beginning, said, if anybody ever says to you these words, you come to me immediately. If anybody ever says to you, don't tell your parents because you'll get in trouble. If that ever happens to you, I told them, come to me. I will not 100% will not judge you. I will not punish you, but you come to me and tell me this, because then that's someone manipulating them. They're saying, hey, don't tell your parents because you could get in trouble. Even if it was a fellow 8, 9, 10-year-old, that's somebody I don't want my kids to be friends with because they're doing it for nefarious reasons. So it's all about really staying ahead of it.
Wait, and I think one of the common things is don't tell your parents because they'll be killed. I will kill them. I mean, it's such an extreme threat. And then they say, I know your address. I know your parents' names.
Right. It's too much for the kids. And that's why I say, if they ever say to you, don't tell your parents, and then whatever follows, I need to know that first part where they say, don't tell your parents. And then I could set up a protection around us. We need to block it off. And there's lots of different things which I advise my clients on how to best prepare themselves and how to deal with this situation. Well, I've got cybersecurity experts that I work with who, are able to shore up and how to set up the Wi-Fi password so you're not be able to hack. And doxing is such a prevalent thing now these days where, people can threaten, I know where you live, I know your address. See that, but that's too much for the child who's 8, 9, 10 to understand. Give that to the parent. And if the parent doesn't understand, you reach out for somebody, whether it be local law enforcement or somebody like myself. You reach out to me. I will gladly advise you, no charge. I will talk to you and say, hey, this is what you need to do. 1, 2, 3 is to shore up the situation, to protect your child, because 764, they don't care. They, obviously they want to see the reaction. That's their narcissism. It's all about them and seeing how they manipulate the victim, and then by extension the victim's family. So it's like I said, it's pure evil.
I really want to get your tips on how to protect kids, but my biggest question is, why are they fucking doing this? Where is this coming from?
I think it's, they're finding people who are clearly, broken, mentally broken. And, as a society, we all know this. We all know the Jeffrey Dahmers. We all know, the type of serial killers, that in the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, they really hid in the shadows. Now they're able to hide behind the computer screen. They're able to really, get to people. And instead, they don't have to go hunt in their neighborhood. They're able to hunt in the world. And then they use Roblox. They use the other video game platforms as their hunting grounds. And they're looking for that. And that's the best way for me to really look at it is they're getting joy. And that's what Jeffrey Dahmer was interviews and all these other serial killers, and Ted Bundy, they felt joy by having power over their victims, by being able to take their lives. And this is, a vulnerable member of society. And by looking at them, I mean, we grew up in the 80s. You knew the child on the milk carton, on the back of the milk carton. It happened in the 80s, and now this is today's version of how they're getting to our children. These are the same deprived people who, like I said, hide behind the computer screen and do their evil deeds. And they find other people because of the internet. They find other people that really are able to, talk to them and understand the same thing that they're talking about. As joyous as the internet is, there is an evil side to it. I mean, it's opening up, where you're able to sit down and talk to people of your own political same decision, your sexual orientation, your religious orientation. If you may not have it in your community, then now these evil people know exactly where to hide whether it be in the dark web or whether it be in these gaming sites, and they're able to connect and then say, I mean, it doesn't have to be in the neighborhood anymore. You could have one person in New York City, one person in LA, one person in England, and they just find each other and they're able to work this together. And that's how 764 came to be. And, purely satanic and evil group.
Spoken from an FBI agent. I mean, your words have so much weight. The one thing the dad said to me today was, the platforms have created a place for predators to sit and wait. It's like a pond full of fish.
Yeah, that's an excellent way to say it. And, obviously from his point, his perspective, he knows better than anybody else. And that's what's horrible was his loss. But he's right. They are sitting there waiting for the vulnerable thing. They're waiting for the target that is unprotected. They're not going to sit there and work to try and manipulate or, to have somebody do some evil things to themselves if it's work for them. They want the easy target. They're looking for the child that is not protected. They're looking for the computer that doesn't have the Wi-Fi password or isn't restricted, or, the child that is unaware of, hey, somebody's talking to me, I shouldn't be talking to them. Click, turn it off. The awareness that the parents have to have is really important, because you can't depend on the child to be like, okay, you're going to know at 9-10 years old when somebody, no, they don't know. And they don't know. And whether the parent says, oh, my kids are fine. No, your kids do not know. So, I would, beg to say, says, I don't care how mature you think your child is, they are not ready for 764. And then if you question that, talk to this father, listening to his voice. They're not ready for 764. These people are at another level, and that's why they're targeting the most, the age group, which it can be most manipulated and be easiest target to pull their strings and get them to do what they want.
It's fucking horrendous.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, pure evil. I mean, I dealt with MS-13 members. I've dealt with Trinitarios, cartel members. They're evil in their way, but they're a part of a criminal enterprise. They're doing it to make money. They're taking over neighborhoods. They're extorting from restaurants, and they're executing other people they deem as a threat to themselves or to their group. I get that, and I understand that, and that's evil from this, but this is pure evil. This is, like I said, Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy type of serial killers, and they're using, instead of, right now there's the big rumor up on the East Coast that there's a serial killer, they found countless number of bodies in Connecticut, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and bodies just a bit. So people are, they love having the theory of that there's a serial killer out there in the Northeast right now. But the fact of the matter is, these guys use the internet as their playground, and all they're doing is waiting for the right victim to swim by.
And it just makes me think, as a psychologist, how many kids have killed themselves, and we've thought it was because of their mental illness, and the parents have been unaware that they were groomed into killing themselves. Part of the bucket list for 764 is that you get yourself into an ER, you get a diagnosis, you get medication, you stay 2 weeks, you come out. So you're earning your stripes, right? You you carve it into your body, 764, which this man's daughter did. And
it's evil.
Like, how much are we mistaking mental illness for this extremist grooming?
Well, I'll leave that to the experts like you. Yourself to designate and diagnose mental instability. I look at it as, like I said, that these are pure evil people. And the problem is this: if you don't have a parent that's aware, the problem we have these days with investigations that the FBI is conducting, and I know United States Attorney's Office, they're working on this. I know FBI investigations are being conducted into 764. But the problem is this: by the time that 764 member has been identified, who have they gotten to? It's not like a bank robbery where a bank was robbed. Okay, we know a bank robber. Okay, now we got to put the clues together, the evidence. We don't, it's a lot of times we don't know that a 764 member has identified, targeted, and manipulated one of your children until it's too late. Unfortunately, the FBI, from what I understand, is working this case, but it's after the fact, after the loss. So that's why it's really dependent on the parent or guardian to sit there with the child and tell them, there's certain things you don't tell, and you shield the child from that. But you tell them enough to say, hey, listen, come find me. There's no questions asked. And then you protect them. And from the beginning, from when my son started playing PlayStation, I always told him, you don't chat. You don't chat with people. You don't chat with people. You don't chat with people. And that's it. And so now that he's had that in his head for 3 years of no chatting, no chatting, no chatting, he now immediately, when he logs on, he mutes his mic. So he's just used to it. Hey, that's the norm. I don't listen to the chat rooms. I don't involve myself in conversations. And that's for me to protect him and saying, hey, it's become the norm now. You're not part of conversations. You don't chat. I don't know who you're chatting with if I'm not sitting there. Most of the time, I'm sitting near him when he's playing on the PlayStation. But even then, I can't be everywhere at all the time. So it's about trying to stay one step ahead and telling them, hey, listen, there are some pretty bad people in these chat rooms. I'm sure most of them are fine. If you find your friends, you connect with your friends, that's fine. But if you ever see this, if they ever say to you, hey, don't tell your parents, or they make you do things that you're not quite sure, or if they threaten us or saying, hey, I know where you live, those are the big red flags. Come find me. I won't judge you. It's a full get out of jail free card, but I will protect you. And that's really what we have to do these days.
We'll be right back after this break. Do you have any other tips that you commonly share in your practice to protect the family and the home and children?
Well, it's studies have shown now that we've had social media and the internet now for a good 15 years. There's studies have shown that children of 16, 17, 18 have said, I kind of wish my parents hadn't let me have social media, because the social media really alters the child's head of like, I got to get the hit of how many likes did I get, or how many, boom, 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 I got to get those likes up. I got to create my YouTube page or Instagram page or this, whatever kids, or Snapchat. So I've told my kids, they don't get a phone until probably, they're early, just before teenage years, 11, 12, and they do not get social media. They don't get any social media at all until minimum 16 years old. And they've shown me that they're mature enough to have social media. And at which time I still would watch over them until they're 18, until they're out of my house, and, they're paying for their phones, at which point I've done everything I can up until they're 18. But I still will tell them, hey, I'm always here for you. If you have a question, I will answer it for you. But all these formative years right now, this is the big time. This is where you really need to be on top of your children. Hey, and people are like, well, I shouldn't, I want him to be my friend, or I want to be, I don't want to be a helicopter parent. Yes, you do. We're not supposed to be friends with our children. We're supposed to be their guardian, and we're supposed to watch out for them and show them the way. So giving them this wide area latitude of letting them grow, letting them explore, that is not the way. That is the target that these 764 members, and there are countless other breakoff groups just like 764. So just say 764 is the only one is not accurate. There are countless others that are out there which have yet to be identified. So to be vigilant, that's our job as parents. We need to stay with them. We need to show them the way. And if you don't know the way, listen, I'm more than happy. I write these articles, the same one, that you looked at, you saw on the article. I give guidance on different cybers, things to prepare yourself for, how to prepare, Wi-Fi, set your Wi-Fi passwords. And really it's awareness. It's just handing them an iPad is absolutely without any checks or balances. It is not only are you giving them access to the world is getting access to your child. So, if they're not old enough to drive a car or drink beer, they're not old enough for the internet, unfettered access to the internet yet.
And I love that you offer an age, but you offer a maturity level with that, right? It's not just about the number. It's about
Yeah.
knowing your kid and their maturity and their capacity to
Yeah.
navigate this.
No, absolutely. And that's part of it. And I've told them, I said, good grades, you stay with your sports that you guys are doing. You have to show me that you are responsible. And I mean, if you have an irresponsible child who doesn't, isn't, behaving well, okay, you lose your iPad, you lose your phone, you lose your thing. We got to be more, on top of our children these days because of the internet, because of the open access. And I told my children, I said, listen, this is about when we'll talk about getting you a phone. They have devices now where I'm able to talk to them directly, where I'm able to track them, where I'm able to say, hey, you need to message me. This is what you have. So they have devices. They have, there's lots of different ways. There's your iWatch, your Gizmo Watch that Verizon makes, where you could have direct communication and no one else can call them based on the settings that you do in the app. You could say, these are the only numbers that are able to call them. And if an outside number, I've tested this, an outside number tries to call them, it says the number you have called is not in service. So, but they're able to call me at any time. If they say, hey, Dad, I need to come out. And I've told them, I said, listen, if you're ever at a friend's house, you're ever at a situation where you're not comfortable, you just call me and say, hey, Dad, I really miss you. What are we having for dinner tonight? And then I know I'm on my way over. And that's just our secret little word, our secret code word. And they also know, if anybody comes to pick them up at school that is not myself or my wife, they know there's special, that person that's supposed to pick them up is given a code word. So they know this code word. So our children know, hey, I may tell them, hey, my friend Jeff is supposed to pick you up. They're not going to get in the car, even though they know Jeff. They're not going to get in the car until Jeff says the code word, which I gave him, which would be the code of the day. And I'll give him the code. Hey, say, Jeff should say this code word to you, pineapple. And if he doesn't say pineapple, you don't get in the car with him. So there's just, like I said, different layers of security. Even though they know Jeff, they don't get in the car unless they hear the code word. So it's trying to stay on top of things. And, a lot of times it's the people that are closest to the child who really take advantage of the child. So that's why it's even like I said, even best friends, even close friends, even sometimes even family members that, shouldn't be at the school and unless you have the code word. So this is where I'm, trying to set the boundaries for my children. And they always have had this boundary. They've always know that I'm there. So when I move the boundary, okay, they're used to it. They're used to this. Okay, Dad's always setting boundaries. Can't have it till here. Can't have it till here. So despite their friends who are 8, 9, 10 years old may have a phone, they understand. Don't ask because it's not going to happen.
One thing I wanted to mention was that even if you pick off an online perpetrator or a perpetrator in real life, it doesn't mean that they haven't groomed another individual to follow in their footsteps. And I think it's important to remind parents that you can never be relieved of this.
Listen, that 764 is just like any other criminal enterprise. You take out a leader, you take out a drug dealer, there's going to be someone to fill those spots. I can't tell you how many MS-13 members I took out, how many MS-13 leaders I took out, and they had a replacement within days. They had a replacement. So it was the constant battle. I knew that we were not going to defeat MS-13. We just had to defeat them at the local level or at the international level, taking out to make it as difficult for them to process, take out the big players to make their lives difficult. Again, you take out a 764 membership leader, there's going to be someone there to take their spot right away and continue operations. It's never ending. It's never ending fight.
That's a great lead in. Can you tell us all about your career? I mean, tell us of your awesomeness taking down America's Most Wanted.
I appreciate it. So yeah, I did 9 years in the Navy before the FBI, and then 9/11 occurred, and the FBI was recruiting. I was an instructor at the Naval Academy, and the FBI came recruiting, and they were looking for lots of different things. And everybody, looks at, traditionally they're looking for accountants and lawyers and such. Well, one of the things they're also looking for is people who speak other languages. And I speak Spanish fluently. My parents are immigrants from Chile and Argentina. And so I was raised speaking Spanish in my home. So I raised my hand. I said, okay, and then give it a shot. And a year later, I was at the FBI Academy, and I got stationed in Newark, New Jersey, where I spent 20 years in Newark, 15 of those hunting MS-13. And for the last 4 years of my career, I was part of a group called Joint Task Force Vulcan, which were hand-picked agents. There was only 3 of us that were picked initially at the outset, which was to go after the leaders of MS-13 internationally. So I would pick off leaders that were in Mexico and bring them to the United States for, charges that we had been able to get them here. But, more importantly, my area of responsibility, my AOR, was New Jersey. So MS-13 leaders, there's a lot of MS-13 activity in New Jersey and Long Island, Virginia, North Carolina. It's a big presence. And, I've had numerous cases where, doing large racketeering cases, RICO, where you're investigating the organization, the group as a whole. Now, for people who don't know RICO is, something that was brought around and is a statute that was created in the 70s to go after the mafia, La Cosa Nostra, the Italian mob. And they were able to utilize that to investigate gangs and large criminal organizations. Whereas if you can prove that an individual commits 2 different acts, 2 separate acts of crime on behalf of the gang, either to elevate the status of the gang, give profit to the gang, or elevate their own status within the gang, that's called a racketeering act. So we could charge them with racketeering. So, for example, we had a case in Plainfield, New Jersey, where a group called the Plainfield Locos Salvatrucha, PLS, were conducting criminal activity. They were drug dealing, they were extorting, and they were committing homicides. That was part of their control. That was controlling the environment, controlling the neighborhoods, fear for them to make a profit and to raise their status. So every one of these acts were RICO acts. And they murdered people. And they murdered a lot of people. And we, in 2013, we started an investigation at the FBI in Newark, and eventually got to 2016, where we went to trial with them and ended up charging 14 different members under one racketeering investigation.
Wow.
One of them was an individual by the name of Walter Giovanni Gomez. He had murdered who was his friend at the time, but he had thought that individual, Julio Matute, had been hanging out with the rival gang, 18th Street. So Walter decided to take it upon himself with a co-conspirator to murder him, and they brutally murdered him. The co-conspirator was caught. Walter was not. He escaped, and in 2011 he fled and was believed that he had gone to Maryland. So in 2016, when we had the trial for the 8 remaining members who had not taken a plea, all of those individuals, it was a 4-month trial, it was huge in New Jersey. They were all found guilty. And if you're found guilty of murder in the aid of racketeering, there's only one sentence: life, mandatory life, and you are not getting out. So you are going to die in prison, in federal prison.
Is there no death penalty?
It was a death penalty case. Yes, there was the potential for the penalty of death penalty in this trial because it was so brutal. But nobody got the death penalty.
How did he murder the last guy?
They were smoking weed, drinking all night, and Julio got up to go to work at 6 a.m. And Walter and his co-conspirator got up. So Walter hit him on the head with a baseball bat, sliced his throat, and then stabbed him 17 times in his back with an ice pick. When the Union County Prosecutor's Office came to arrest him, he jumped out a second-floor window and disappeared into the night. And he was never seen again until 2016, when, as soon as the trial was done, the U.S. Attorney's Office, which I was working with, the AUSA, said, go get him. So I started working with our Public Affairs Office and putting up posters on him in the areas we believed that he was hiding out, which were MS-13 strongholds: Long Island, Maryland, Virginia, and North Carolina, where I believed he had fled and was hiding amongst his friends. I got no results from that. I got very little tips, no results. Then I spoke to our Violent Crimes Division, and they had said there's a spot open on the 10 Most Wanted. And after it took me a year of working with them and getting the application done, I was able to get him onto the FBI's 10 Most Wanted in April of 2017. And then the tips started coming in. I was doing interviews on Telemundo, Univision, and the media. And I really was focusing my energy on Maryland. But the Maryland MS-13 really have a good working relationship with MS-13 in New Jersey. I started putting him up on billboards all over Maryland. And some tips came in, and none of them really flushed out. They were all nothing. And then one day in August, we got a phone call. Individual said, "Hey, listen, I play soccer here in Maryland, and that guy looks really familiar. I think that guy that I saw on the board is the guy you're looking for." We said, "Okay, this sounds like a pretty credible tip." So we went out to the address of one of the vehicle that was where the individual was seen getting into, and he left. He had given us a plate. So we went to the house, and it was just a surveillance team. So when the FBI conducts an arrest, if it's for one person, you typically come with 10 to 12 agents. So they overwhelm the individual so that there's no chance that they fight back. So it isn't, when we arrest somebody, it's not like 2 FBI agents, or it's 10 to 12. But where surveillance, we typically do only 4 to 6 members. 4 is a small. It's somewhere in the 6 to 8 range. So we were doing surveillance, and we sat on the house where the vehicle license plate had come back to was registered. And we wanted to see if there were other vehicles in the parking lot. While we're sitting there, we see a woman come out and get into the vehicle in question. And we said, all right, let's follow her. Let's see where she goes. So we followed her down the road, and she went to a strip mall. And while we're sitting in the strip mall waiting for her to do something, she doesn't get out of a car. All of a sudden, we see Walter come out of a barbershop. He was getting his hair cut. And at which point we decided, we were like, well, there's only 6 of us, but we can't pass up this opportunity. We see him. He's here. We don't have an arrest plan, but we're trained agents. We had task force officers with us. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody's been trained well. So we jumped out and we arrested him. And he, within the day, he was admitting who he was. And we transferred him back to New Jersey, where eventually it took about a month or 2, but he pled guilty to all the charges, because a lot of it has to do with the trial that happened, a year or 2 years earlier. We had convicted so many of them, and they had received life sentences. And he saw this. And plus, we had a lot of witnesses who testified for us. They were confidential informants and individuals who were part of his gang who had decided to flip and take an easier deal so that they could testify. So they took it was up to the judge to make the final decision, but they received a lighter sentence because of their testimony. When he saw this, the confidential informants, the testimonies, and the results of mandatory life, he took a plea. So he was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison, and we're now about 10 years into that. So he's got another 15 years, and at which time, as soon as he's done, he'll get deported back to El Salvador.
Could he get out early at all?
No, there's no, you have to serve the full 25 years.
Wow. How many years did you spend tracking this guy?
Well, I sort of was lightly doing it in 2014, 2015, but we were preparing for the trial. So the AUSAs were, we had 8 individuals going to trial all at the same time, which is not very common in a federal trial. It's not very common. Typically, sometimes 1, 2, or 3 defendants is somewhat the norm, but to have 8 defendants all at the same time, the U.S. Attorney's Office in New Jersey had decided they want to go forward with all 8. Instead of doing 8 separate trials, we'll do one big, huge trial. And the AUSAs saw that if I had arrested him, if I had captured him right before the trial, that would completely change the perspective of the trial, because not only would because he's charged as part of this group, most likely it would postpone the trial. So they had spent almost a year preparing for this trial, getting every witness, getting every piece of evidence, everything in line. If I had captured him before the trial, it would have completely changed the narrative of how everything was constructed, because every witness is in a certain place for an exact reason. Set up the story. Here's the story. Here are the supporting witnesses, and here's the evidence. And so everything is in line by the U.S. Attorney's Office. They put everything in line, show the evidence, the physical evidence, the supporting evidence, and it's all put there together. So bringing, if I had captured Walter, it would change that. So they were telling me, they're like, when we were a year out from the trial, they're like, let's ease up on the hunt. Okay. If he comes up, he comes up. There's nothing to it. But let's not find him until this trial is done. And literally, like the day after the sentencing, my 2A USA said, go forth, go get him, because it was done. We had received not the sentencing, but the sentence. When they were sentenced, they were found guilty. They were said, okay, that's locked down. The trial is done. Go find Walter. And then it took me after that. It took me about a year and a half to find him, to get that arrest in Washington, D.C.
Oh, wow.
But it was worth it. It was worth every minute of it.
Oh, yeah. It's fucking amazing.
Thank you.
Good.
Like I said, I had a lot of fun. So a lot of agents in the FBI, they spend 10, 12, 14 years, working the streets of wherever they are, working their crime. And then they'll go on to become a supervisor, whether they're tired of working the streets or they want to get a promotion for a little bit more money. I never did that. I never took the promotion. And you can choose not to be promoted. You can choose it. Either you step up to the plate or you don't. And I chose because I loved working the streets. I loved putting together the 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And AUSA I worked for, great AUSA. He's out in California. He's out there in LA now. He put it so well. A RICO is a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle. And there's 1,000 different pieces, and everything needs to fit together to form the entire picture, which is where we're ready for trial. And that's why I worked everything I did during my investigations. I worked hand in hand with the U.S. Attorney's Office because I was always preparing for trial. I believe it's somewhere like 80, in the mid 85% of FBI investigations never see a day in court. They never see a day in court because so much evidence is collected correctly by the FBI agents, legally, working with the courts, working with the U.S. Attorney's Office, that the defendant is overwhelmed. They're like, wow, okay, you got my voice, you got my video, you got informants, and they don't want to do it. They don't want to go to trial because, if they go to trial for 25, they could face 20 years. If they go to trial, they're like, oh no, if I take a plea, I'll do 10 years. So a lot of times they'll take plea offers and it never sees a day in court. My guys, they were looking at life. So they had nothing to lose. They're like, I can only win but I'm not going to cop and be a snitch. I'm not going to say I admit something. So that's for MS-13 world. They never wanted to admit they were a snitch, and they never wanted to admit they were guilty.
I appreciate your explanation of RICO too, because as the Sean Combs trial plays out, I think there's 8 million influencers trying to explain it to the audience, like they actually know what it is, and no one has explained it the way that you just did.
Well, it's important with the Sean. I've been following that, and they're saying it very well. The U.S. Attorney's Office needs to show that these victims that he was manipulating was to further his music empire, his musical company. Just committing the crimes of whatever they call them, freak-offs or sexual harassment or sexual assault, that in and itself is not a RICO, but he is using her to further his music empire. That's the racketeering, because that's his organization. He used it. He utilized his music industry as a criminal enterprise to further his criminal enterprise, to make money, to utilize people, to create the status around himself. So that's where the RICO they're charging is a little bit more difficult than MS-13, because to get that is saying a tattoo, photographs. That's a little bit easier to establish that. With this one, it'll be a little bit more difficult, but I think they're getting there very, very nicely.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back. Okay, question for you. What's the most disturbing thing you've ever experienced or seen?
The most disturbing thing was probably my last case that I helped out on. So Essex County, New Jersey is a county in New Jersey, in the eastern part of New Jersey, in northeast Jersey. And the Essex County Prosecutor's Office reached out to me and they said, hey, we've got 2 missing people. Actually, no, they've got 1 missing person and 1 victim of a murder. And we believe it's connected to an MS-13 group right here in Irvington, Orange, and Newark, New Jersey. Do you know anything about this? Now, I was the lead MS-13 investigator for the state of New Jersey, for the FBI in Newark. So most of it, passed through me. So there's still a lot of members of MS-13 that I didn't know, but I was very well known in the law enforcement community. So he came to me and they asked me, and I had an informant that could provide information, and we tapped into him and we found out some information. And he went and started talking to this group, using recordings, and we were supervising him. And we were able to get a location on where not only was we believed the body was, but where they had killed the individual. There's a beautiful mansion that had fallen into disrepair in a beautiful neighborhood in Orange, New Jersey. It literally was a mansion, completely overgrown. Nobody had lived there for years. And we walked in there to go look at it, and there still was furniture. It literally people had walked out of there, I'd say 5 years prior, and never sold it, and it just fallen into disrepair, overgrown, and everything. And which understood as to why they targeted this. We went to the upstairs bathroom that the informant told us, and we found a complete murder scene. I mean, it was blood everywhere in the bathtub. So we brought in FBI evidence response team for over the course of 3 days, I believe. They processed it, took everything meticulously, pieces of carpet, really were slow to get everything. But now our job was to find the body. And we were told that it was in a state park, not too far from the area, that they had taken the body there. And now we had already identified who these individuals were. We had taken them into custody on probable cause. The Essex County Prosecutor's Office had taken them into custody based on the information from the informant. And at which point then we started hunting. We started walking. We literally were walking. We did working with my squad. We would walk through the woods, and we were pointed as to, okay, it was right here in the woods, this area. We spent days out there. We brought a cadaver dog out there. We spent days looking for this and looking for disrupted soil because it hadn't happened that long in the past. But nothing. We couldn't find anything. And at one point, I remember standing in the woods. There, and I was sitting there going, where is this body? I know it's here. I didn't know where it was. So a few days later, we kept working with these individuals, and a lot of them were 15, 16 years old. And these are young MS-13 members. And finally, we were able to break one of them, and he said, all right, I'll show you where it's at. And he walked out to the woods, and he pointed straight to the ground. He said, here's the body. And it was exactly, I say, within a foot or two of where I was. Standing there where I was going, this is the perfect spot. And you're hiding. That's exactly where it was. It was being hidden. Oh. But the ground didn't show this. So we started digging. And at 3 feet, we're thinking that, from the perspective of a criminal, we're thinking that they're going to bury the body 1 to 2 feet and then, leave it there. No, at 3 feet, they're still saying, no, we don't see anything. Keep digging. You're not even close. We got down to 6 feet down, and we found garbage bags full of body parts. They had chopped up the victim. They had, literally dissected him, arms, shoulders, legs, put it all together. And that's where they had done it at that house. That's why it was so bloody. And they had dissected this young man and buried him there. And that's where the body was discovered. That was probably the most disturbing scene, seeing the abandoned house, bloody walls, everything. It was really kind of like a movie, a haunted house movie. It was really amazing. It was crazy.
Did you open the plastic bags to see the body, or is that someone else's job?
Well, the medical examiner was there. He is the one. So the body was discovered, and then the medical examiner was called in from the Essex County, and they are the ones that, to preserve evidence, took the body out. They did open the bag there on scene to be able to positively identify the individual because he had numerous tattoos. He was not gang affiliated, but they just targeted him because they think that he was, encroaching on their territory. And maybe selling small amounts of drugs.
What was it like for you to see that, to see the bags opening? I mean, are there maggots at this point?
No, because he was buried so deep. He was so deep. The body was very well preserved. And I'd only been there a week or so, maybe 2 weeks. But the body was very well preserved because it was inside a plastic bag, a garbage bag, and it was buried 6 feet under. So they hadn't had a chance. So when you opened up, literally the skin color was, it was pink. His still had skin color pink. The tattoos had bright colors. But once it touched air, it immediately started to deteriorate. By the time he had left the scene, the body was already deteriorating very, very rapidly.
Wow. That's incredible. And such a difficult case to capture.
It's pretty surreal.
Oh my God. Okay, I'm going to hit you with 4 questions.
Shoot.
If you could commit a crime and get away with it, what would it be?
That's a good question. Probably, I wouldn't want anybody to get hurt. I wouldn't want to do anything like that somebody would hurt. But probably, you know what? I sometimes, I've got a New Jersey inside of me. So if I could, give somebody a love tap, a little boom, boom, get out of my way type of road rage, I probably would do that just for people to get out of my way. Sometimes, I'm not very, the drivers in New Jersey and in Montana, they're two different types of people, two different types of drivers.
Yes, they are.
So
I have felt like my life was going to be threatened in Jersey because of driving.
Oh yeah, no, it's without a doubt. If you learn how to drive in New Jersey, you can drive anywhere. It's crazy.
Okay, next question. The death penalty question. I love this question because depending on a person's profession, it's always very different, the answer. But if you had to die by death penalty, how would you want to go?
Well, I would not want to feel it. I would want to I'd say so. Probably lethal injection. Because I believe that, I don't have a lot of experience in death penalty, but I believe it's kind of like where, you're putting a dog to sleep or an animal. You go to sleep first, and then the second fluid is the one that will stop your heart. I would want to just go to sleep because you do gunshot. Maybe you'll live for like 5 or 10 seconds later. You get hanging. That's not 100% sure. You may end up choking, hanging there for like 18 minutes, 20 minutes. And electrocution sounds horrific. So yeah. I wouldn't want to I wouldn't want the electric chair. So probably lethal injection.
I think I would do the same thing. I talked to a scientist and she said she'd want to know at least the studies behind the medications used for the lethal injection, which I agree with.
I would want to know more.
We want to make sure they're going to be effective.
Exactly.
Okay. Last question.
Yes.
Can you tell me a secret that no one else knows?
Secret that no one else knows. You know what? It's people that really know me know this, but the general, I am in awe of my wife, of Christine. She is, the best thing that's ever happened to me. She's my best friend. I love working with her. I know a lot of people talk about how, husband and wife working together, doesn't really work out sometimes. And I couldn't imagine being with anybody else. So, the fact that like I said, she is the person I trust the most on this earth, and I run everything by her. And she is absolutely the person I trust the most. And like I said, she's my best friend. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else without her. If I'm not with her, it's, I'm missing her. And, she's spectacular. She's the CEO of the company. So technically I work for her. But she's so smart. She's a spectacular. And like I said, people that know me know how much I love her. But like I said, if it's a secret that not everybody else knows, that's the fact is I'm lucky to have met her. We met later in life, when I was 39 and she was 38. And we're, fortunate enough to have 2 wonderful children together. And like I said, I'm glad I waited 39 years for her.
Oh, the secret is that you're mushy.
Don't tell anybody.
Oh,
Don't tell anybody.
I had one question that I forgot to ask about changing a law, which I really would love your answer on. If you could change a law in America, what would that be?
Change a law in America. Well, in today's environment, I that's a really good question. It changes constantly. That's a really good question. If I could change a law, change an existing law or create a law, if I was in Congress and just make a new law, I would make it, I'm glad that there are so many rules in the court system, to make sure that every agent, every law enforcement officer follows the rules correctly. And people, I've been questioned, I get put on the stand during my trials, I was questioned about everything that I did, but everything was precise, to the point, and making sure that everything was done correctly and legally above board. And I never, ever broke a rule, broke a law to get my cases, to get my people to the position. I'd rather do it completely legally. So that's a question that really you'd have to sit down and really think about, because, the laws that are in place, and I'm going to cop out on this one. I apologize. I'm going to cop out on the last question, because the laws that are in place are good, are good. They're there for a reason. I think it would, it'd be something that affects me personally up here in Montana, whether it be, I don't have to register my vehicle once a year and, pay Montana, the Montana registration fees, which, cost me like $500 a car once a year. Whereas in New Jersey, you don't have to do it every couple of years. Here, it's every year. And that's how they collect. That's how we don't have state income tax. So it's probably something here in Montana. But I wouldn't change. I mean, it's absolutely beautiful up here. And I love it that I've retired up here with Christine and the kids. So it's, so probably something along those lines.
I like that. I mean, you work for the government, you're happy with it.
Yeah. I don't, personally, I haven't seen something that's off the top of my head that would say, oh, that's gotta change, and I'm sure there's something I'll think of later on in like an hour or two. I'll be like, oh, I should have said that, but it's nothing that sticks right off the top of my head. I mean, I'm pretty happy having worked, like I said, I worked international terrorism. I worked domestic terrorism. I chased white supremacists in New Jersey, which supposedly, by the way, is one of the worst states in the union for white supremacists. Mm. And then the MS-13 and the cartels. So, I've been around different types of federal statutes, federal crimes, and stuff like that. So those are the, I'm pretty familiar with those. So, but yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
Oh, Leslie, Doc, it was my pleasure. I
think so you're going to start a podcast. We just don't know where it's going to land, but
right. So I'm in.
You have
talks.
Your website. What's your website?
So my website is BrunnerSierraGroup.com, and I've got a Substack also, which is BrunnerSierraGroup.substack.com. So you can sign up for the newsletter on Substack, and I'm on Instagram too, Brunner Sierra Group, and I'm on Twitter as Daniel Brunner 1 on Twitter. I don't use Twitter that much. That is very, very, I don't tweet that much. I just watch everything that's happening. Because a lot of that on Twitter is, bots and things like that. So you really got to take it with a grain of salt. Instagram, I collaborate with you. And yes, I'm in talks with some people to partner up with a very, very good friend of mine, probably one of my best friends, that he and I have known each other since we were 9 years old. And he has a vast, large experience. I won't get into it because we haven't into his background, but he was in the military, vast, large experience in the military. And he and I have known each other since we were 9 years old, and we are like two peas in a pod. So there is talks about us launching a podcast, and there's a lot of people that are interested. So I've already got 5 guests who want to get in it, and so we're looking to launch within the next couple of weeks. I've got a couple of meetings set up here in the next couple of days to find out more if there's sufficient interest.
I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
I'll be a guest.
No, we've already got you lined up. So you and, like I said, 4 other people have already been, we've gotten verbal commitments that they're excited about. It's gonna cover lots of different subjects. So we're not gonna just talk about true crime. Yeah, we're gonna talk about FBI cases. I'll have FBI agents on. We'll have members of the military that my friend has been affiliated with, and he knows. They're talking about their stories. But this is not a battle story, type of podcast to say, well, this is what happened when we come in. We're going to have those, but we're going to talk about larger subjects, topics that really impact something like mental health, PTSD, men's mental health, women's mental health. So we're going to cover a lot of different topics, a lot of different great people are said they're excited about it. So we're looking forward to it. We'll get you more, and once we launch, we'll let you know.
Yeah, I'll come on. We'll talk about Charles Manson and accelerationism.
That'll be
that's
fun.
What's reoccurring. Okay. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you, Doc. I appreciate it, and look forward to it again.
Oh, hey. You're here. Thanks for watching and listening to Intentionally Disturbing. I'll see you next time. Intentionally Disturbing is a podcast from me, Dr. Leslie. It's distributed by iHeartMedia. Liam Billingham is the senior producer, and he also edits the show and puts up with my shit. Katie Cobbs does the social media, and she attempts to keep me in my lane, not always successful. The executive producers are Paul Anderson and Scott McCarthy for Workhouse Media, who have told me not to text them 24/7. But you know what? I'm still the boss. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you next week for more.